Divino Zigbo is active. That's great.
So he's going to be their third running back.
I guess.
It's gonna be pretty gross.
By the way, I just went ahead and hit the live button, just because why not?
Oh shit! I was talking that. I mean, me revealing that Divine Zigbo is going to be the RB3. That was supposed to be behind the paywall, guys.
Oh shit! I'm sorry, man.
Everybody Venmo Pete when the show's over.
All right. Well, Theo, why don't you get us started off here, and we'll rip through about the next 45 minutes or so, and then get everybody out of here to go finalize our lineups.
Yeah, so we're excited. We've had a bunch of these tailgate shows on Mondays and Thursdays, and I'm happy to welcome Pete Overzet into the GOAT District for the first time, and we're happy to have you tonight. I don't think anybody needs to know where to find you, but maybe you could go over kind of your schedule right now, where they can find you and ship chasing and everything, all the other great things you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, for this crew, yeah, we do ship chasing on Wednesday nights at 9:15 leading up to FFPC lock. People want us to release the bids, before they come out. So we do that. And yeah, I write the Fantasy Life newsletter most days of the week over there, free newsletter. They're working with Matthew Berry. And yeah, then just do a bunch of DFS stuff on my YouTube channel as well, reviewing GPP lineups, talking strategy on Friday. So a little bit of everything in the fantasy space.
And how did you guys do on waivers this week? Who were some of the guys you were adding on your teams, and any guys you kind of missed out on that you were kind of disappointed to?
Yeah, we were having big debates like in our group chats with our co-managers and stuff. And even Ben Gretch and I were kind of on this Mike Boone stuff is out of control. Pat was a little bit more bullish. And so I think we ended up kind of pushing our collective bids down, ended up missing on him because when you saw some of those $700 bids coming, we were like, okay, we value him completely differently. Even some of those Latavius Murray bids were insane. I would say our most picked up guy across our teams was probably Khalil Shakur. I thought he was going to be a little bit more sought after, and we were getting him pretty routinely in the $30 to $50 range. But how about you guys? What did you guys think of the whole kind of Mike Boone, Latavius Murray frenzy?
So Dan and I, we ended up, I would say we put bids for our collective teams on Boone and Murray. Yep. Dan, maybe you could kind of share kind of the guys you won this week.
Yeah, so basically my bids for Boone and Murray were all pretty much between like $90 and $150. There's just not that much to spend your money on so far this year. So in some years I probably wouldn't bid that much, but this year you kind of got to do it. I've got a lot of teams that are hero running back with the hero having already taken the coup de grace for this year, i.e. Jonathan Taylor or DeAndre Swift and all that kind of stuff. So I am very interested in any running back with the pulse on a lot of my teams. So I went that way, and we did get quite a bit of more Latavius Murray, I would say, than Mike Boone. But I mean, I was surprised we were able to pull them in for that 90 to 150 range.
Yeah, I tweeted out today basically the Boone winning bids in my FFPC main events, and some were pretty nuts. I mean, we saw like north of 50% in a few leagues. I think that Mojo tweeted out like an 800 plus Mike Boone bid. So it's just nuts. I was kind of making the argument that Latavius Murray would be the cheaper ad, and I think he's got a path. So we'll see where it goes. He's old, but I think that he's reliable, and I think he can be utilized around the goal line. Again, this week was kind of weird. I ended up with a lot of Dulcich where he was available. I kind of cleaned up Dulcich, and then like you, I added some Shakir. And I'm just going back for kind of the second waiver wire run, both of those guys are still available in a lot of these FFPC leagues, so it's definitely worth taking a look. What are kind of your thoughts on Shakir? Do you think you see him having a path, or is this more speculative for you?
Yeah, to me, the thing with him is maybe just like a keep it simple, stupid kind of thing where it's like best offense in football, a lot of draft nicks, and people thought he was an undervalued prospect. You have obviously Crowder out for the season. McKenzie was in the concussion protocol, so there was a chance you might even get a spot start this week with him just on the field in 3 wide receiver sets. And then you also have Gabe Davis struggling a little bit. Granted, he's been dealing with that ankle injury, but you just could see paths to him getting on the field. And then I'm always like a big believer in if there's, inertia or momentum, you make a couple big plays and then the team's like, we can't take you off the field or we got to keep giving you opportunities. So while I didn't think he was just like a slam dunk, like getting a guy with his profile attached to Josh Allen where no one's really emerged beyond Steph Diggs, like to me, that was really attractive.
Yeah, he's definitely interesting. And then Dan, you added some Mo Alley Cox. What are you using him in any of your lineups tonight, or is it just more of a keeping an eye on him from the bench?
Do I have to answer that question?
Full disclosure here.
Full disclosure, yes, I am using him in a few spots. But as basically I punted tight end in almost every league. So, in some of those leagues I've righted the ship. In other leagues I was still looking to right the ship. So I'm hoping Cox can pull it together and give me some decent starts for a while here until something else happens. So yeah, I'm starting Cox in a few places. I don't love it, but I'll do it.
You're starting him with me. We have him
Right.
out there together. So we're gonna talk it into existence. Mo Alley Cox finds the end zone tonight on Thursday Night Football, and we're gonna keep that thing going.
How about you, Pete? Have you dipped your toes into the Cox water?
I think we had him on a couple teams and then tossed him back after a couple, Kyle Granson weeks. And then, then you're looking at him again. It does seem like a good spot for him tonight. It does seem like he pulled ahead again from those other guys. And then, if you buy that, Surtain's shutting down Michael Pittman, you got to think they need someone to step up. And then you can always hang your hat on him having a really nice red zone role. So, yeah, I mean, as far as those plug your nose and pray type spot starters, he seems pretty decent.
Yeah, that's basically the way I was looking at it too. Just put him in there and hope something happens in the end zone.
One guy that I'm hopeful for that I have stashed a few places is Alec Pierce. Just curious your two guys' thoughts on Pierce and kind of his situation moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, he, again, just under the thesis of someone needs to step up in this offense. They're so devoid of playmakers. I had some high hopes that Paris Campbell would maybe be a thing heading into the season. That doesn't seem to be panning out. I like Alec Pierce. I tend to like all these rookies. The black box nature of them and their ability to kind of earn a role as the season goes on is always attractive. And, it's just what competition does he have even for targets in that offense? I mean, behind Pittman, they are so desperate for playmakers. He was dropped even in a couple of our main event leagues, and which surprised me because I think he could finish the season strong.
Yeah, he had the concussion, and then he came back, and I think he's got about 140 yards the last 2 weeks. Dan, do you have hopes of another pass catcher in Indianapolis kind of being fantasy viable?
If it's anybody, it's probably Pierce, I think. But I don't really have a lot of Pierce. I haven't seen him really get dropped hardly anywhere. And, just kind of the way I was putting together my teams, I was mostly done at wide receiver around the time that I'd be thinking about grabbing Pierce. I was a lot more interested in 0 running back candidates. So I don't have a ton of him, but he is somebody that's interesting to me. I think I think he could come on down the stretch and provide a nice little lift. I mean, if I could, between Alec Pierce and Nico Collins, I think I'd take Pierce. Between Alec Pierce and Josh Palmer, I think I'd take Pierce. I don't know how you guys feel about those, but
I think I'm with you on both.
He was drafted behind both of those guys, so I think that's already saying something.
And then what are you guys' thoughts on the Atlanta backfield? Obviously, Tyler Algier was not available in too many leagues we play in, but Damian Williams was. I think some people are stashing him. Do we guys have any thoughts on the appropriate way to play the Atlanta backfield kind of moving forward? Are we hopeful for Algier, or we think Williams is a play?
I mean, I'm definitely hopeful for Algier. I was joking around on Ship Chasing last night that if you have Kyle Pitts, you should be picking up Huntley and Damian Williams so that you don't tilt when they're the ones getting the touches and it's not Kyle Pitts. It's like leveraging against your own bet. But yeah, I mean, they're kind of like the Bears, right? Where you're not super excited about that offense, but they're running it so much. And like, if the one thing and we're probably going to talk about how frustrated we are with Arthur Smith, but the one thing he can do apparently is call a run game because it's doing pretty well. So yeah, I had interest in Huntley. I like Damian Williams coming into the year, just because he did kind of have that 3-down skill set. You could kind of squint and see the upside to a bell cow role. So yeah, it's a little complicated now. I don't love Huntley's profile, but he was kind of my preferred ad in that backfield with the assumption Algier was rostered everywhere.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I picked up several shares of Huntley. I had a couple scattered Damian Williams shares already where, I just kind of had room to stash a player for a couple weeks. So I like that call as well. But so, Pete, if you could spend 5 minutes alone in a room with Arthur Smith, what happens?
First I'd turn on some music, get some candles going. No, yeah, it's so massively frustrating right now. And, there's lots of good jokes out there. I even saw right now they were showing, there was a clip of him blocking, and he was just absolutely crushing it as an inline blocker. And people were making the assumption, is he too good as a multifaceted tight end that they don't feel like they just need to use him exclusively as a pass catcher. So there just seems to be so many issues right now. And I feel like, I don't know what I say to Arthur Smith other than, get the ball to your best player. And yet if they're only going to throw the ball 17 times, it's not like they're ignoring him. They're ignoring passing altogether to the point where I think we got to be worried about Drake London going forward now too.
Yeah, he's found a way to make, two guys we were super excited about, like, unplayable. I am not a big Arthur Smith fan, but the guy's 2-2, so we're not going to get him fired. It's incredibly frustrating.
There is only one coach in the league that is looking lovingly at the Bears offense, and it's not the Bears offensive coordinator. It's Arthur Smith.
It's just crazy to me. It's maybe the most frustrated I think I've been with the coach's usage. I mean, we're going to talk about Matt Rule, I'm sure, as well, as a guy that we all think is kind of a donkey, but at least you're getting production out of Christian McCaffrey. Maybe not the smash that you want, but I can't think of another coach in the past few years where there was a player that I was so set on in the second round, and I can really look at the coach's way they use him as the reason for his lack of fantasy success. Because I think Kyle Pitts is a stud. We saw him flash last year, and this guy just doesn't seem to get it, especially after the team used such high draft capital on him, and now they're running this archaic offense. The whole thing doesn't make much sense to me at all. It's very frustrating.
And it's hard to know what even shakeup or what change could actually benefit things. Sure, Arthur Smith could get fired. Maybe Desmond Ridder coming in might change things up a bit, but even then they're not going to let him throw. I just don't even know how this gets better. I mean, I think Pitts is still going to get, a couple deep targets. He's going to get a couple red zone looks. He's going to convert and have some games, but the ceiling case for Kyle Pitts has essentially just been wiped out.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously anything has to start with, try to get Kyle Pitts in a route as many times as there is a drop back, and we're not even there yet. So, the other stuff still has to be added on top of that. So I think the first place to start is just having Pitts out in routes more often.
Yep.
And on the flip side, besides some of these guys that we think are doing a terrible job, at least with our fantasy players, we're seeing some tremendous coaching performances, namely Mike McDaniel, who's been able to elevate, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle usage-wise, and also Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator with Detroit. Can we expect continued fantasy success from Miami and Detroit with their skill position players? And maybe share your thoughts on a few guys, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, this Miami offense is like the stuff fantasy dreams are made of, where they're incredibly pass heavy and then super concentrated as well. Like they basically just said, Mike Gesicki, you're a blocker. We are going to exclusively throw to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So yeah, this is a dream, and I'm honestly not even that panicked about Tua being out this week. Sure, yeah, I think you lose some of the like insane ceiling games like we saw in that Baltimore one. But I think Teddy is going to feed Jalen Waddle, who I believe was back at practice after missing Wednesday,
Yes,
and
yes, he
Tyreek.
was.
So I'm just not worried about those guys. I think they're both going to feast when you have that kind of target volume in a pass-heavy offense. It's awesome. I would say I'm a little worried about the Lions specifically this week. Amon-Ra didn't practice again today. I just assume they sit him out with DeAndre Swift with the bye next week. And I know people are excited about this team and how bad their defense is and how it leads to shootouts. But man, going on the road to New England, outdoors, their first non-dome game, they've had 3 really juicy game environments. And I think people are maybe just a touch too high on them in this spot this week. I already bet the under on it. It opened at 46.5 down to 45.5. I just think this is one of those classic spots where they get beaten down without their weapons. And the market seemed to agree because Patriots are still a -3 favorite with, Bailey Zappi as their quarterback.
And Dan, we were trendsetters with our Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, drafting them on the same team together in the high stakes streets. People were laughing at that decision back in September, but now they're not laughing at us now, are they?
No, definitely not. Yeah, it definitely feels good. And pairing them up with Josh Allen for the quarterback, so we weren't even relying on Tua. With the fact that now Bridgewater's in there. Everybody was kind of like, okay, well, I see why you did that, but why didn't you go ahead and draft Tua also? And it's like, well, when you have Josh Allen, Tua just is no longer a real priority at that point. Let's throw Seattle into that conversation as well. Pete, what do you see with Seattle? Is this just a hall of mirrors, or is this for real, or what are we looking at here?
I know. I feel like they're the one that is so tough. I mean, you look at all the advanced metrics for Geno Smith right now. He's like top 7 across the board for basically any kind of quarterback peripheral or stat you'd look at. And then, I talk to people and everyone's like, it still just feels like, Pete Carroll eventually going to go back to his ways, turtle shell this offense. I'm not so sure. Like, this is kind of similar to, the Dolphins as well, where it's really concentrated around Metcalf and Lockett. They have a great running game that I think teams really have to respect, especially with Kenneth Walker coming along. I feel like this game against the Saints this week is kind of a good neutral test to kind of see where they're at ultimately, and if they'll push the pace or if that's just been, a product of their game environments. But man, I'm cautiously optimistic on these guys. I have a hard time with this backfield too, because Penny's performing so well, and yet it also feels like Kenneth Walker is somewhat inevitable. So how do you guys think this plays out? If Penny stays healthy the whole season, who do you think ends up owning that backfield by the end of the season?
I think it's going to be Walker by the end of the season. I mean, Penny's already dealing with, a couple little knocks here and there. And I just think the coaching staff really likes Walker. We've never seen a full season out of Rashad Penny. I think if you have Penny now, just kind of ride him into the sunset. But I think by the end of the season, Kenneth Walker is going to be definitely fantasy viable, and it might be, as soon as, midseason. So I know, Dan, we have some Kenneth Walker. Do you agree on that one?
I mean, I definitely wonder about that because Pete Carroll's never been a big one on using his rookies. If he gets forced into it, he'll definitely do it. But how long did we watch Chris Carson keep Penny on the shelf?
True.
Obviously Penny had a lot to do with that with his own injuries, but even when Penny was healthy, Chris Carson always seemed to get the nod. So I would not be surprised as long as Penny stays healthy to see him have the majority of this backfield and Walker just kind of gets slowly worked in.
Right on cue as I say this, Bob Condata releases the Seahawks practice report. Kenneth Walker pops up with a shoulder injury. So,
of course,
yeah,
great timing.
Okay.
Great timing. I love that we see Tyler Lockett beating his ADP. Tyler Lockett was the guy we talked about on the GOAT District as, like,
oh yeah,
this summer he was a guy we were like, why is he going this late? there's no possible way he's going to be a wide receiver 5. And you saw NFFC leagues where, that's a start 3 wide receiver in a flex format. And Tyler Lockett in some of those early RotoWire OCs was going in like the 9th round, 8th round. He's just a very, very good player, and they're allowing Geno to have a lot of pass attempts. And I think, DK is easy to see. He's an alpha. He's going to beat his ADP, but Tyler Lockett quietly is like an every week flex, type guy, and he's going to end up being very valuable. So I'm bullish on the Seattle offense. I love the fact that they're letting Geno Smith go for it. He also had like over 40 yards rushing and a touchdown last week. Dan and I were laughing. We have one NFFC team that we split. I was a Trey Lance team, and and now we have Jared Goff and Geno Smith as our 2 QBs, and we're not like sickened and grossed out by it yet.
Yeah,
in a couple weeks we might be. Yeah, but like this weekend we're like cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, as someone who's trying to piece together, Trey Lance backup plans on multiple rosters, I would kill for Jared Goff and Geno Smith. I mean, we're really digging the bottom of the barrel, trying to get Kenny Pickett through this brutal stretch. So, yeah, I mean, I would feel very comfortable with that combo.
So staying on Kenny Pickett, he's taken over in Pittsburgh. Mitch Trubisky sent back to the bench. What are your expectations for Pittsburgh moving forward? And does Kenny Pickett starting at QB kind of move anybody up or down for you?
Yeah, so this one's so hard because I was very excited about the Kenny Pickett era, and yet I've been so frustrated with how it's rolled out. I thought the whole way that Mike Tomlin played this, where he did it mid-game as opposed to giving, his rookie 10 days to prep for this game. And now you're throwing them basically into the lion's den of this schedule. I mean, this matchup on the road versus the Bills is brutal. They have the Eagles coming up in a couple of weeks. It's just going to be a tough stretch. And so I'm like, I'm just praying that he doesn't implode to the point where they start having second thoughts. And if he can just show enough, not make too many backbreaking mistakes, the schedule really opens up towards the fantasy playoffs. Basically week 11, 12 on, it really gets easy. And everything you'd want, him targeting Pickens, him targeting Pat Freiermuth, you can just see the upside for this offense. And the upside is just being better than Mitch Trubisky and Ben Roethlisberger. And I think he can do that.
It's extremely weird that you don't want him to get the first start against the Jets, like in a winnable game. I agree. That's super weird. I'm curious what your thoughts are on him with Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson is a guy that had a poor game last week. Do we think he's QB proof, or do you think it's going to be maybe we need to treat Deontay Johnson kind of like on that wide receiver 2-3 line rather than a high end wide receiver 2 option?
It does seem like something's going to have to give, and I think what might ultimately give is that Chase Claypool is basically erased from this offense. Right. And then it just funnels through Deontay Johnson, Pickens, who kind of takes over as the deep threat, and then Freiermuth. If Claypool stays relevant, I think that definitely hurts Deontay Johnson's volume case, because that's what he's really hung his hat on, is just being this target hog. And I feel like we see with competent quarterbacks, like they spread it around a little bit more. They don't lock in on just that first read, which is what Deontay Johnson has been for Trubisky and Roethlisberger. So I think Deontay Johnson can survive this at the expense of Claypool. But if Claypool's still getting his, I do think it could get messy.
Yeah, I just don't think Claypool's really going to get his. I mean, he's never been a Tomlin favorite. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Pickens is definitely the ascendant piece in this offense. Deontay Johnson, if somebody's selling low, I'd probably be buying. But Claypool, I think Theo, we had one Claypool share, and we jettisoned that this week. So
yeah, it's goodbye Chase Claypool. But yeah, I'm very bullish on Freiermuth with the rookie QB that seems to like him. We're big fans of Freiermuth in the GOAT district. We'll maybe we could use this to break a tie right now, Dan. Dan and I have a NFFC super team that we share with Andrew Schellenberg, and our tight ends this week tight ends every week are Gerald Everett and Pat Freiermuth, which is nice to have, but it's a continual headache picking the one to start. Who are you going with this week, Everett or Freiermuth?
Man, that one is really close. Geez, I think I just prefer the game environment much more for the Chargers against that Browns game. It has one of the better totals of the week, and I do think there's just risk of, yeah, sure, you could get some garbage time with them, but when you look at 14 and a half point favorites in this Bills defense, you could just see it being a super rough day where I just worry about the entire offense cratering. And again, it looks like Keenan Allen's probably going to miss another week. Gerald Everett's been good. He has that nice red zone role. I think I'm just going to side with the better offense, better implied team total, all that jazz this week.
Well, Dan, there goes my garbage time argument that I had in the chat with you and Andrew. It just goes,
you guys been debating this? Yeah,
I've been pushing this every week. I'm just like, guys, I mean, I know Freiermuth's good, but we have Everett too. Should we play him? And every time Theo's like, no, it's Muth.
I'm a Muth stan.
I love Pat Freiermuth. I just hate this spot for them this week. It's just so brutal.
That's exactly where I'm at. Most of the time, I'm more than happy to let Theo have his way on Freiermuth. I just kind of throw it out there, just to be the guy who's throwing out there that, hey, we do have an option.
We did have Gerald Everett a few times, though. We had Gerald Everett on the Smash game. He was in the lineup.
Did we? I think we did. I think we played. We played him in other. I think we played him on other teams. I don't think we played anybody but Muth on that team. I don't know.
That team is running so pure. That team is running so pure, Dan, that we don't even necessarily pay attention to the Smash games on our bench.
That's right.
Another big game this weekend is Baltimore hosting Cincinnati. Last year, the Ravens lost twice to the Bengals and conceded 41 points in each game. This feels like a landmine game for the Ravens. It's like you got to get the big monkey off your back, the team from your division that you've lost to twice in a row. What's your prediction for this game and kind of some things we should be looking for fantasy-wise? Start with Pete.
Yeah, this one I was talking to my buddy Mike Leone about this. We were saying how we're so frustrated this isn't on the main slate for DFS purposes because you have such an awesome buy low opportunity on multiple Bengals here. Feels like a get right game for both Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon. I've never been the biggest Joe Mixon guy, but his passing game usage is really promising right now. And it seems like everyone's kind of frustrated with the efficiency in this offensive line. A lot of us spent, top 5 picks on Jamar Chase. He's been a bit disappointment, but man, this Ravens secondary has been pretty bad. I know divisional games can either kind of go either way where they go bonkers or it's a really tight, low scoring game. This feels like one of the bonker games to me. And so, yeah, I think this is going to be a fun one. And I do like the Bengals in this spot, I think.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, the Ravens are rumored to actually be starting actual lawn chairs at cornerback this week. So, I'm firing up any Bengals receiver I can get my hands on.
Yeah, it's the Ravens are like -3 at home. The Ravens offense is humming, though. I think that this is a shootout game. I really hope that we get a tremendous fantasy game for both teams. A lot of Bengals, a lot of Ravens in my starting lineups. Another big game this weekend is Philadelphia heading to Arizona. Is Philadelphia the best team in the NFC, guys?
I think so. I mean, who would even be – who are we putting up there with them? I mean, I think the Rams are frauds. I think the Packers have lots of issues. Who am I forgetting? I guess the Bucks. Is that who's?
Yeah, the Bucks. I think. I'm not sure how many issues. How many issues do you think Green Bay has? I mean, other than getting dismantled by Minnesota in Week 1, they've looked pretty darn good.
Yeah, I think if they really are able to kind of ramp up and get Dobbs and Christian Watson heavily involved, which was encouraging with Watson's usage. I do think then they'll have kind of the playmakers to kind of compete in the playoffs. I think just without those guys having significant roles, I just really worry about their explosiveness. If you can just sell out to stop the run against them, and then you have a bunch of other catch and fall down specialists, you can see the Alan Lazard disdain in my voice. But yeah, if they get those rookies going, I'll get more bullish.
Yeah, for sure. And as Joe King says, the Packers just beat a backup quarterback at home in overtime. I would argue that that's kind of their modus operandi in a lot of cases. They like to play down to the level of an opponent at times. So I don't necessarily think that disqualifies them, but yeah, it's definitely a little bit concerning.
Yeah, Philly to me is pretty much by far and away the team to beat right now. I mean, it's only week 5. A lot of things can change, but the
Yeah,
combination of what they have on the offensive line and the defense has just been,
yeah,
we saw in that Minnesota game how strong that defense is.
that defense looks very playoff ready. I mean, when you get into the playoffs, defense really does matter. And them and the Bucks look like they have maybe a couple of the best defense. And it seems strange to say that after Kansas City boat raced them, but I mean, I really think the Bucks have one of the better defenses in the NFC.
Staying in Philly, Miles Sanders is currently a top 10 running back. Should we be treating him as a true RB1 at this point? I know the RB spot has been very beat up, but he's running for almost 5 yards a carry. And again, it's that tremendous offensive line. He's next to a rushing quarterback. What are you guys' thoughts on Miles Sanders moving forward? Is he a potential league winner?
I mean, I feel like he's almost already paid off his draft cost.
Right.
Things have broken right for him, right? Boston Scott being inactive, you get this weather game against the Jags where they heavily relied on the run. They also just haven't really been pressed yet. We haven't even had to see the passing game really get going in the second half, which is why I think people are so excited for this game against the Cardinals. But yeah, I mean, the other thing, the reason I think people were so spooked on Miles Sanders, one, he told us not to draft him, and they love a committee in Philadelphia, but we were all excited, or at least I was, about Kenneth Gainwell, and I thought he was going to have a really nice role, and he just has not been involved to the extent I think we all collectively thought. And so, yeah, it's paved the way for him. I think he has like a little bit of that Devin Singletary feel to him, right? Where it's like we try to come up with ways to discredit his role or say it's going to change, and yet when push comes to shove, the team clearly trusts him and wants him out on the field.
Right, exactly.
Sirianni.
And the thing is, too, I mean, Gainwell, all of his peripherals look really good. I mean, you put him up there and you look at, like his advanced stats, he's like, I believe it's his yards after contact is pretty incredible. He's doing a lot of things right. He's getting almost as many, like he's out in routes almost as much as Miles Sanders. He's just not getting targeted as much. So, you see a lot of things there where if anything does happen to Sanders, I think Gainwell's definitely going to be the league winner. But for now, it's totally Sanders.
Yeah, and Sirianni kind of played us all when he wore the Gainwell T-shirt to the press conference. I think a lot of people put a lot of credit to that T-shirt. But yeah, Sanders looks awesome to me. And then sticking with that Philly-Arizona game, right now Hollywood Brown is wide receiver 6 overall. What are your guys' expectations for Hollywood when DeAndre Hopkins returns?
Yeah, I was excited about drafting Marquise Brown because I felt like you could have your cake and eat it too. You could say the first 6 weeks he's going to be this target hog, which is kind of played out. I think he had 16 targets a couple of weeks ago. And then you say, oh, DeAndre Hopkins comes back. He is getting single coverage as a deep threat. Defense is forced to pay attention to Nuke, and then you could see him getting loose for big plays. So I feel like the Marquise Brown part of the equation is mostly played out. It's just I'm still kind of down on Cliff. I'm down on this offense. I feel like even without Nuke, they've still kind of underperformed their talent. And I just have long-term concerns about Cliff being a competent offensive play caller that can get the most out of his personnel.
He's the new Mike McCarthy. I mean, just very uncreative on offense. You almost can tell that the opposing defense is sitting there going, okay, we don't have to worry about any special formations or any movement or anything like that. They're just lining up in the same positions and going all the time.
He's very much a fake sharp who has a quarterback who can kind of make things happen. And he's got a bunch of guys on offense have kind of been underperforming besides Hollywood Brown. So Hollywood Brown's in kind of a perfect storm volume-wise, and he's got the connection with Kyler. I'm interested to see, how much of a target share DeAndre Hopkins is going to have when he comes back. We said maybe 20%. I think he was a little less than that last year. So obviously having Hopkins there is going to help the whole offense. But like Pete said, again, relying on Cliff week to week is a difficult thing. One offense, and this I saw a tweet today, was J.J. Zachariason talked about Matt Stafford's not only quarterback 28 overall, but points per game wise, he's quarterback 33 among all quarterbacks who have started a game this year. He's just been horrendous, and that Los Angeles offense has been terrible. They played Dallas at home this week. Outside of Cooper Kupp, how concerned should we be about Matt Stafford and the Rams offense? Is there any hope here, guys, or is Stafford and this offense sort of dust for the season?
I'm really concerned because, Matthew Stafford, because he's not giving us anything from a rushing standpoint, like for him to pay off, we need him throwing 3 to 4 touchdowns a game, or at least sprinkling in these games in the same way we see other pocket passers like, Burrow or Rodgers or Brady do. And with Allen Robinson flopping and Tyler Higbee just being strictly kind of an over the middle underneath guy who's not giving you anything after the catch, it's like, where are the explosive plays outside of Cooper Kupp? And, I think about this a lot for DFS purposes. It's like, I don't even feel like you ever need to stack Stafford with Kupp. Just play Kupp. You'll get all of the production straight through him. And then you couple that with the running game just being, stuck in mud. It really is an offense that I'm not excited about. I saw ESPN's power rankings had them 5th overall. They had the Ravens like 9. I'm like, what? Are we looking at the same thing? Like, this offense I'm massively concerned about.
Yeah, and the offensive line is just it's horrible right now, and it looks like it's going to be horrible for at least 3 more weeks. So, I don't see anything in the near term that has me starting anyone but Kupp from this offense.
The poor offensive line play has probably helped Tyler Higbee, though. I think like the low ADOT Higbee looks, it's he'd be the only Ram that I would feel good about starting. Again, managing expectations, but tight end's such a mess. And the running game, like the first week, we felt great about Darrell Henderson. Akers looks just terrible, and Henderson doesn't seem to be doing it anymore. So I think Dallas is definitely a live dog on the road in Los Angeles. What are some players that have slow starts out the gate that we can expect to see a turnaround from? Curious your thought on that, Pete.
Yeah, not holding out a lot of hope for Kyle Pitts. I'm trying to think here of a guy. I'm still hopeful that Elijah Moore can kind of come on. We were drafting a ton of Garrett Wilson. I do think Garrett Wilson's going to be the top dog, but I don't think it necessarily has to come at the expense of Elijah Moore. Obviously, this comes down to, can Zach Wilson be a competent quarterback? But I think once he gets his sea legs and they get going, I think things will kind of concentrate around Moore, Wilson, and Breece Hall. And when that does, I think all 3 of those guys will be solid. So I think Moore is a guy who's, disappointed people. The easy layup one is Jamar Chase. Like, I don't really have any concerns about him. But yeah, what about you guys? Any buy lows?
I gave Elijah Moore as a buy low yesterday. He leads the NFL in routes run. And also I have so much of them that I kind of want to talk it into existence kind of deal. But I think A.J. Dillon right now, I just like the way he looks. Aaron Jones is averaging like about 16 points per game, and Dillon's just a little less than 11. I would bet on them getting close to one another. Everything you want to see usage-wise is there for Dillon. I think he ran more routes than Jones last week, and he looked good to me in overtime in that Patriots game. So I'm on A.J. Dillon. I like your Elijah Moore call a lot. It's kind of hard this year, but I do think you'll see some good games out of DJ Moore just out of necessity. The targets were up last week. But yeah, I would say Elijah Moore is a very good call. And if you're in a trading league, it's definitely a guy to buy low on. And I think if you're in a dynasty league, I know a lot of people are getting a little nervous because of Garrett Wilson looking like such a proper alpha that Elijah Moore might be discounted. He's going to be in the league a long time. He's going to have a lot of fantasy success is the way I look at him. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, for sure. Probably George Kittle. It was concerning how little he was targeted in the last game, but I think that might have been game plan specific. So I haven't lost hope for Kittle at all. A couple of guys who I think are definitely really showing their age, Joe Mixon and Dalvin Cook. Neither one of them have looked especially spry to me this year. Cook probably has looked a little bit more spry, but with that shoulder injury that he's got going right now, it could be a couple 3 weeks before we see him back to full strength again. Maybe not until after the bye. So, I would say probably Kittle is my biggest buy low right now.
Yeah, you definitely can buy low on Kittle. I think people are very frustrated, and that'll probably end up paying off. I think you could make an argument for Brandon Ayuk as well. I think a lot of the 49ers players are kind of beat up, but that offense, I think, will get better just based on I think they're well coached, and I think they're going to have some good matchups down the stretch. Kind of a bigger picture question for you guys. We've seen such an advantage from Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson teams to start out the season. Do you think that when we're sitting down and drafting in Vegas in September of next year, you're going to see the truly elite quarterbacks being drafted higher? Like, I think this year you'd see Josh Allen going in like the 4th round. Once in a while, he would sneak into that 3rd round. Do you think that we're going to start seeing maybe a few guys in that 3rd round type area?
I think so, because we already have kind of data points for this. We can look at Underdog's resurrection ADP and see how people on the fly are valuing this. This contest starts after week 6. Lamar Jackson, ADP of 9. Josh Allen, 10.7. Jalen Hurts, 15.7. Mahomes, 19.1. I mean, drafters are already aggressively moving to get these guys. And yeah, I think that's going to track over to our FFPC drafts. I think these macro trends definitely get, pounded on by the field, just like we're going to see way more wide receivers go early next year, specifically in the first couple of rounds. So yeah, I think the gap between these is definitely interesting. I guess we do have some time to course correct, right? Like if guys like Geno Smith and Jared Goff hold on and perform well for the whole season, maybe we get a little late round QB buzz still hanging in there. But as it looks now, like if we went to Vegas right now and redrafted main event teams, don't you think, these guys would all go in the top 3 rounds?
Absolutely. I think that it's almost like a tier of their own, and you see like basically a touchdown difference in terms of scoring from QB3 down to QB4. So yeah, no, I'm totally with you on that. What about you, Dan? Do you think that this is a kind of like a changing of the guard in draft strategies?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a changing of the guard. I don't think it's going to be quite as extreme as what we're seeing in the Underdog right now, but I definitely think it's for real, and that people are going to be starting to push up those quarterbacks. It's such a huge advantage having those guys that's just impossible to ignore.
And I agree with you on your wide receiver comment as well. Especially considering that the age of the running backs scoring a lot this year, they're all kind of like in the 25 and over range. So I think next year's first round is going to be kind of wild. We're running a little low on time. Who is the number 1 pick next year when we're drafting in Vegas, guys? We have 4 weeks of data now. Who is going number 1 next year in FFPC main events?
Man, I feel like I can't say a running back just based on how these things are going. We just talked about how down we are on Matthew Stafford in this offense. You got to imagine some of that sentiment carries over a bit. We already saw that a little bit heading into this year when drafters were putting Justin Jefferson ahead of Cooper Kupp. I'll say one of Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, but I won't be wishy-washy. I'll say Jamar Chase ends up finishing the season red hot and ends up as the 101 next year.
I'll say Justin Jefferson. I said Jamar Chase when we did this exercise in the summer, but I'm going to go Justin Jefferson. I think we saw, last week in London, and there's no T. Higgins opposite of him. I think he'll be number 1 everywhere next year.
I'm going with the new Antonio Brown without all the craziness. Cooper Kupp. I mean, yeah, nobody's dethroned him yet, even though we've kind of all wanted it to happen a little bit. So a couple quick questions from the audience before we get you out of here, Pete. Pittman over London this week, is that a play you would make?
I think so. Yeah, I know people are worried about the cornerback matchup, but again, when we just look at the pass volume that we expect for the Colts relative to the Falcons, I want it. And I know there's some garbage time potential there. I don't even think London's a bad play per se, but I think with Pittman, you still need to get him in your lineup.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with that. Theo, thoughts on that?
Pittman for me. Pittman for me. Even with the tough matchup. I mean, I just like Pete said earlier. We're trusting Arthur Smith to get Drake London the volume. I think Pittman. I know he'll be targeted. Even in a tough matchup, I know he's going to get targets tonight.
All right, and then we'll make this into a two-pronged question, Pete. What do you think of Josh Jacobs going forward, and how bad has this been for the brand? Before you answer, I'll say I tweeted out earlier this week that Josh Jacobs is just he's one of those players that I always find a reason to hate him every year, and then every year I'm like, why didn't I draft him? He was so fucking cheap.
And he was even more cheap on Underdog than even in FFPC. Like, I was never going to consider him on FFPC, but like in retrospect, like some of the times when he was falling to the 7th and 8th round, we had Leone on one of our live streams this summer when we were all trying to fade him, I think in the 8th round of a ship chasing draft, and Leone yelled at us that we had fucking jumped the shark, and he was correct. We had fully jumped the shark. I think his all of his peripherals and stuff have increased each week. Like I said, it looked like a cell phone graph as far as his usage, and so I think there's still a little room for skepticism here. Bolden and Abdullah both been a little banged up at times. I do think this new coaching staff still likes Zamir White, but as far as right now, I mean, let the good times roll. Definitely taking an L on a full Josh Jacobs fade right now, but I don't also necessarily think this is exactly how the full season's going to play out, because we've also seen lots of ups and downs, ebbs and flows for Josh Jacobs throughout the years, in the same way we have for Joe Mixon, where it's not taking away from their ceiling case, but they don't necessarily have that locked-in floor that you'd like from, the grade A bell cows.
Yep.
One last question for Pete. We need to talk about the scourge on our communities, pickleball. What is your end game with your anti-pickleball campaign? Are you just want awareness against it, or are you for a total ban?
Theo, I just want the courts that our children play across the country to be restored. I want kids to be able to go play Foursquare and hopscotch and draw on chalk. I don't need hipsters out here displacing them playing this geriatric game. Ironically, I think this is a government psyops. We now have LeBron James, all of these big guys pummeling money into this. They're all just stuffing their coffers with this dirty pickleball money. Everyone will move on to the next hipster sport here in 6 months, and they'll leave the youth of America here crying, wondering what happened, Theo. That's my issue.
Fighting the good fight, Pete.
Are you guys pickleball heads? I mean, feel free to be on.
We are not. There's a rumor that JD is playing pickleball right now, and that's why he's not here on the show. But I want to debunk that. That is just an internet rumor.
That is just a rumor. I mean, I'm even geriatric, and I don't play it, so
Well, I mean, I went down to Hilton Head last March, and that was like my first time seeing it up close, and it was all retirees, and I was like, oh, this is a great thing for them. And now it's every young person who's like, oh, I found my new thing. It's like, go get in a fucking bowling league like I did back in my 20s, all right? Have the beer pitchers for the beer frames. I mean, let's just do normal stuff. You don't have to pretend like you like this sport.
I am seeing tap houses putting in pickleball courts. I mean,
yeah,
seriously.
Well, they at my gym, they told me, they now have everything blocked off so people can play pickleball, and they're like, look, basketball is not pulling in new memberships. They're like, we are selling memberships on pickleball alone. And I looked them in the face and I was like, I know you got to do what you need to for your bottom line, but I will boycott this gym if you take away our hard courts from the youth of America who just want to play basketball.
No, absolutely. It's spreading on Long Island. You see it all over the place. So, it's definitely it's definitely a little wild. You see these in the morning, it's old people, and then in the early evening, it's like 30-year-olds. So you never know where you get with a pickleball court.
It's a shame.
Yep.
It's a shame.
Yep, definitely. All right, guys. Well, it is 7:04. We got about 10 or 15 minutes here before we got to get our lineups all locked in and everything. So we'll let everybody get out of here. But thanks, Pete, for coming on. We really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. And Theo, what do we have coming up in the next week and a half or so?
So we'll be back on Monday night with Mario Puig of RotoWire joining us for another tailgate. And then Tuesday night, we had a Michael Edelman and Matt Modica of the NFFC in our first high stakes roundtable early in the season. Now we're going to be joined by the defending RotoWire OC champion Billy Wazowski, an NFFC Hall of Famer, and Biplot Mandel. So we've got an FFPC guy and an NFFC guy. We're going to talk some big picture topics, and we're going to talk about the high stakes streets. So that'll be a lot of fun on Tuesday.
All right, that sounds great. All right, we're going to let you guys get out of here. Thanks everybody for